Welcome to Defence Matters, the podcast that gives you an insight into the people who work at defence equipment and support. For our first ever episode, I'm thrilled to have a fantastic guest with me today, Lauren Jenkins, Engineering Capacity Manager at DE&S and one of the top 50 women in engineering in 2023. I can't wait to hear more from Lauren and learn about her incredible journey and achievements. So sit back, relax, and enjoy this episode of Defence Matters. So thank you so much for joining us today, Lauren. Really appreciate you taking your time to have this conversation with us, and very excited to have you on our first ever episode of Defence Matters.
I'm honoured.
Thank you.
Make
Thank
it a
you
good
very
one.
much. Yeah. So let's start with a bit about your career journey then. So do you mind giving us a bit of a rundown of your career journey to date?
Yeah, so I joined DE&S on what was at the time the Defence Engineering and Science grad scheme. But I joined having done an aeronautical engineering degree and did that in the kind of traditional way. Went to sixth form, did A levels, did physics and maths at A level. So I got used to quite early on in my career being the only girl or woman in a room or a classroom. That pretty much unfortunately continued throughout my whole uni career, but then joined DE&S as a grad, so did about 3 years on the graduate scheme. Also, as part of that, did a master's degree, so went to Cranfield University to do a master's in explosive ordnance engineering. I started my first post-grad scheme job working on a complex weapon system as a project engineer, and then after that moved across into an environmental protection role, so working to try and understand how our activities in the weapons operating centre impact on the environment, how we can improve on our environmental performance. So are there policies and things we can put in place to to lessen our impact on the environment, because we know we're always going to have one. I then got my first kind of proper lead engineer job and managed a small team of engineers to support some of our in-service ammunition, in particular, a lot of the ammunition that the Royal Navy use on their ships. Then was fortunate enough to get promoted to chief engineer, which had always kind of been my dream. So since I started in the graduate scheme, I'd always had my eyes on getting a chief engineer's job. So to get that relatively early on in my career was quite a big achievement for me. And then joined in my current role in February as an engineering capacity manager, so working with our recruitment agencies and also deploying staff internally as well, so looking at how I can marry up people in my business with the right roles and try and support our business priorities.
It's quite varied, isn't it, in terms of the bits you've been able to do and work on since joining the grad scheme.
And what's been nice in all of that as well is all of those career moves have been supported by the business, but mainly paced by myself. So when I have gone for promotions, it's been because I felt ready.
What, I suppose, sparks your motivation to pursue a career within engineering and specifically within the defence sector?
So engineering, first of all, I started doing my A levels wanting to be a doctor, and then realized that it took a really long time to do that. And I happened to go along to an engineering open day at one of the universities. Was sold by mainly because it's heavy on maths and physics, which were the two subjects I was strongest at in school. So it's like, well, seems like a good way to start. You know, engineering degrees are always in high demand, and you can't really go too far wrong with an engineering degree. And I think that's just as true now as it was back then. Similar story for how I got into defence, to be honest, was I went along to our careers. We had some careers talks at uni, and one of them was from an engineering graduate at that point. But that was 11 years ago now, and I've stayed. So clearly some other stuff has kept me in it as well.
So I know obviously more recently then, you were named in the top 50 for women in engineering in 2023, which is an excellent achievement. So yeah, massive well done for that. So talk me through how that came about then.
It's presented through the Women's Engineering Society, which I'm a member of and have been for a few years, and that membership actually is sponsored by DE&S. and then found out through their normal emails that they were running their awards, which they've seemingly been running for a few years now, but that was the first time I'd heard of it, was this year. And saw on there that they were encouraging people to self-nominate. So I actually put myself forward for the award. Never expected in a million years to get it. But then, yeah, found out in, I think it was May I found out, but got presented with the award in June.
And what was your kind of initial reaction when you found out that you had been named in the top 50?
Oh, I cried. Because I opened the email while I was on Skype to a colleague, and I just burst into tears because I think it was more through shock than, but yes, it was just really nice to be recognized. And I think in particular because I'd self-nominated as well, even though they said they weren't gonna, they were all going to be considered equally whether or not they were self-nominated. I think because I'd put myself forward for it, you always have the niggle in the back of your mind if you go, well, I think what I've done is, good and challenging and impressive, but you're never quite sure whether anyone else is going to see it the same way. So I was obviously really happy with it. And I mean, every picture of me on the day of the awards, I've got like a massive grin on my face. So I think that probably says it all, to be honest.
As a woman in engineering, obviously it is a traditionally male-dominated field. What challenges have you faced, either professionally or personally?
So at the start, and it really started for me in sixth form with being the only girl in my physics class, for example, it felt quite weird. I think it's been such a long time now, because that was 2007 that I started sixth form. So I've been in that environment for such a long time now that I don't really notice anymore. But I think the main challenge for me over the course of my career has been learning how to balance my naturally quite bubbly, positive personality with feeling like I need to tone that down. Trying to balance feeling like I need to be more traditionally masculine and more direct and firm and harsh to a point, with that not really being who I am naturally. But other than that, I've been lucky enough that I've always had incredibly supportive bosses. So even though I've been, managed by men primarily throughout my career, they've always been really supportive of me specifically. But also I do have lots of female engineering role models in my business that I've been lucky enough to get to know quite well throughout my career. So I've always had both.
This podcast is brought to you by DE&S. If you're looking for a new career opportunity, visit des.mod.uk/vacancies to find out more. So, from your side of things, then, what do you believe are the unique contributions that women can bring to the defence sector, and particularly in engineering?
Generally speaking, a more diverse organisation is often a better one.
Yeah.
The teams that I've worked in that have been the more diverse ones, either through age or things like types of experience. So, whether they're degree educated or have come from a more apprenticeship background, gender, race, whatever it is, the teams that have been more diverse in terms of people have generally had better outcomes. If I look at myself as a woman in engineering, what I've been able to bring to it is that maybe a slightly more laid back approach, and I think a bit of mediation of delivery sometimes. So just being able to chill out a little bit and go, it's all right, it's not that serious. Like sometimes it is, sometimes what we're doing is life or death, and it is that serious. But sometimes just being able to temper people's emotions.
I don't know, obviously the kind of list of accomplishments you've had since working at DE&S is pretty vast, as you've already said. But is there a particular project or accomplishment that you are most proud of?
Career-wise, the most rewarding project or event for me has been the fielding of the Sky Sabre capability. So I was the chief engineer for a part of that system called Landscepter, and that is a brand new capability for the Army that is the primary defence system for the Falkland Islands. And so not only was I involved in bringing that into service, which was a real big achievement, was a culmination of a lot of work through lots and lots of people over, probably a whole decade. But then being able to clear that system for use in Poland to support the Ukrainian forces last year was, again, culmination of a lot of work from a lot of people. So being able to sign that off, which is something I can say that I did, signing that off was a real big accomplishment, and really, I think, brought into the forefront of my mind the impact that I can personally have on defence as a whole, but my systems that I was looking after at that point. And even just something as simple as finding an article on the Independent or whatever, I can't remember, the Telegraph, one of the newspapers online, that was announcing, the defence minister announcing that system was being deployed, being able to send that to my family and go, I wouldn't say I did that, I didn't do everything, but I can pinpoint the exact input that I had on that, and can say that probably wouldn't have happened without me. That is a massive achievement.
And I suppose to finish up then, Lauren, if you could give one bit of advice to young women interested in pursuing a career in engineering and specifically in DE&S, what would it be?
The main piece of advice I would give, and I have given this advice to lots of people, is you just got to get out there and do it. Because if there'll be lots of people, often yourself, but there'll be lots of other people asking you, why do you want to go and do that? Why do you want to go and insert yourself into what is still a very male dominated field? And then you'll have the imposter syndrome throughout your career of going, oh my God, I'm the only woman here, or everyone else is so much older than me. Everybody else knows what they're doing. I'm the only one who doesn't. Why on earth am I here? That is pretty much inevitable, I think, for all people to go through, but in particular women. And sometimes the best thing you can do for yourself is fake that confidence, the whole fake it till you make it attitude. And that has been what has got me through the vast majority of my career. I like I said, I am a pretty confident person, but I haven't always been this way. If I reflect on the kind of person I was when I started the grad scheme, I was nowhere near as self-assured as I am now. I was nowhere near as confident in my abilities. I spent a lot of time comparing myself to other people, often unfairly, comparing myself to people who'd been in the business 10 years. Well, that's not a fair comparison to make to anybody, is it? Just trying to push yourself past that initial point of discomfort where you are out of your comfort zone. The more frequently you do that, the easier it gets. So I guess a really roundabout way of saying just do it, and it's not as scary as you think it's going to be. Normally worrying about it is worse than the actual thing. So whether that's putting yourself forward for presentations, nominating yourself for awards, agreeing to do things like this podcast, you just got to try, and it'll be fine.
I think that's a really good note to end on then. So a big thank you for joining me today, for taking time out of your busy schedule to speak to us. And yeah, we'll be looking forward to seeing how your career progresses and continues to go forward in the next few coming months, years and beyond.
Well, thank you very much.
Big thank you once again to Lauren for joining me on our first episode of Defence Matters, and thank you all for listening. If Lauren's story has inspired you to pursue a career at Defence Equipment and Support, then follow the link both in the comments below and just on your screen now to find out more.